What's up, guys? I'm Dwayne, and this is Blackboard Gaming, where we teach you about all these great board games that are out there, waiting to be played by you and yours.
I'm a simple man, don't wanna complicate ya, complicate ya.
Hey, guys, and welcome to my board game wrap-up video for the month of March. Now, in the month of March, I've gotten a total of 19 games played, which was a pretty busy month for me. But pretty much it's probably due to the fact that earlier in March, we had the pleasure of going to Dice Tower West. So I got like probably half of those games played over there. So, out of those 19 games, 10 of those games were new to me, new plays for me. So, let's get to the list. So, the very first game that I played in the month of March, right before we went to Dice Tower West, a couple of my son's friends came over, and my wife cooked dinner, and we ended up playing Herbaceous. Now, in Herbaceous, you're pretty much planting herbs in your garden, and you're drafting these cards. You place them in a public garden, or you place them in your private garden, and then you get a chance to pot them. Now, I introduced this game to them, and it was really fun. They really enjoyed this game. So, we didn't have a lot of time, so I picked a game that easy to set up, easy to explain, easy to explain, easy to play, and they loved it. One of his friends, his wife was with him, and she really enjoyed the game also. She was like, I really like this game. So that's Herbaceous. Now, on to Vegas. So right before we went to Dice Tower West, my daughter lives there with her family. So we spent the day with them, and we had 3 grandboys, and I introduced them to a card game called 10 from Aeg Games. And in 10, it's a push your luck game where you're drawing cards from the top of this deck, trying to make sure you don't go over 10. And what you're trying to do is the cards, there are 4 colors and number 1 through 8, and you are trying to complete runs of the same color. Now, but when you draw those cards off the deck, like if you draw a 2 and then you draw a 4, now a 6, you're trying not to go over the 10 or you're bust. Now, there are other cards that have currency on them. So currency subtracts from that total, but you also don't want to get 10 currency. Now, let's say if you don't bust, then you can either take the cards, the number cards, and place them in front of you, or you could take the currency. But if you take the cards, everybody else around the table gets the currency, and they can use that currency to bid on cards, wild cards, or buy cards from the market. Now, we really enjoyed that game. We ended up playing it was my first time playing it, and we played it twice. And I won the first game, and then my oldest grandson, he won the second game. And they really enjoyed that game. So that's 10 from AEG. Now on to Dice Tower West. Now, Dice Tower West was amazing, okay? And I ended up getting a total of 8 games played at Dice Tower West, which is really not a lot, but we were just there for the 3-day weekend. And out of those 8 games, 5 of those games are games that I had already played, and 3 were new plays for me. So let's talk about the 5 games. So the first game is Floriferous, another one from Pencil First Games. So I taught Floriferous twice at Dice Tower West. And Floriferous, you are walking through the garden, picking flowers, and placing flowers in front of you in your play area, and you're trying to score points based on the type of flowers that you got, or the colors of flowers, or how many bugs are on those flowers, or whatever. Now, my wife loves Floriferous, so I had brought my copy just in case we got to show some people how to play. So we played it twice at Dice Tower, and then once we got back home to Detroit, I ended up showing 2 more groups of people how to play Floriferous. And everybody has really loved it. They, a couple people have went and bought it. Floriferous is a beautiful game. Now, the one thing I have to say about Floriferous and the aforementioned Herbaceous, both by Pencil First Game, they're like relaxing games, nature games, but they can be low-key cutthroat. Because the best part of playing those games is when you grab a card or you score some cards, and for Herbaceous, if you score some cards, or at Floriferous, you grab a card and you hear grumbling around the table, especially when everybody's grumbling, you know that everybody had their eye on that card. So yeah, I love that interaction in Floriferous. So, all right, the next game that we played was Wingspan, which is one we hadn't played in a while. So as me and my wife were walking through the room, we saw Wingspan set up on the table, and it had the upgraded food components. And we were like, oh, let's play Wingspan. And another gentleman came up, and he had never played Wingspan before. So I ended up teaching how to play Wingspan, which was fun. I forgot how great that game is. Well, I hadn't forgotten. It's just a beautiful game to have on the table, and I love it. I love my nature theme. Now, the next game that I was able to teach is a game called Meadow. Now, Mick and Starla over at Our Family Plays Games, I listen to their channel religiously, and Starla had mentioned that she had been wanting to play Meadow. So, of course, when we got to Dice Tower West, I offered to teach Meadow. So we played it. Meadow was my wife's favorite game of 2021. It was in my top 5. It's such a beautiful game where you're just building out a meadow in front of you. And you're drafting cards from the middle. If you've ever played Quadropolis, that's how you're drafting the cards. And you're placing them in front of you, and there are certain things that you have to pay attention to. So in order to place a butterfly, you might need a larva or something like that. Or, it's just really, really nice. And so it was a successful teach. Now, the next game that I was able to teach was Batoku, which is a big game from Aeg Games. And I was able to teach this game to Mick from OFPG and the brothers Murph. And it was a successful teach. I love that game. It's very easy, but it's a lot of stuff. It is a point solid, a really big point solid game. But I really do love teaching games, especially when I teach it and I make sure that I don't miss out on any rules which would be detrimental to somebody winning the game or doing well in the game. So I had to make sure that I point out everything, and they loved it, So Batoku. Now, the 5th game that I played, but I was just a participant in, is Ark Nova. Now, Ark Nova is worth the hype. As I said before, beautiful game where you're building your zoo, you're placing tiles, making your own personal zoo, and it is really worth the hype. I love this game, and since getting back from Dice Tower, I already had my copy. I played it 3 more times in the solo mode. I won twice and lost once, and I love Ark Nova. So those are the 5 games that I had already played. Now the 3 games that were new to me at Dice Tower was, the first one's called Dice Miner, which is probably my favorite game of the month. Now Dice Miner, I've heard Ruel Gaviola, he talks about it over his Twitch stream, and he loves this game. And I watched him play it with his wife, and I was interested. And my local game store had a regular copy and a deluxe copy of the game. And every time I looked at it, I was reluctant to pull the trigger because, my wife, the theme of it is you play as dwarves. And so it's kind of like a fantasy world. and I didn't think my wife was gonna be really into the theme, so I held off. But then I finally played it with Ruel and Rado, and I said, I want this game. This is a quick, get it in where you can fit it in. We played twice, and I love both plays on it. And of course, when I got home to Detroit, went to my local game store, it was gone. And I was like kicking myself, like, man, I should have got it. So I'm on the hunt for that game, and that's Dice Biter. It is a great game. The next game is Savannah Park. Now, Rado taught me how to play Savannah Park, and I really enjoyed it. It is a very simple game to play. You're just it's like a bingo style. So you have your park in front of you with these hexagonal tiles with these different animals, and a person calls out a tile that has like a number of animals on it, and everybody else finds that exact tile, and you have to move it to another spot. So like one of my friends who I introduced it to since getting back to Detroit, he called it a shell game, pretty much. And because when I got back, I ended up playing it a couple of times with my wife, and then I taught a friend of mine who I meet up at the local game store, and I taught him how to play it, and both of them loved it. So Savannah Park is a great game. It's part of Capstone's family line, so it is a great family game. Now, the third game that was new to me at Dice Tower was a game called Animal Kingdom. Now, Animal Kingdom was a game I almost kickstarted, but I held off, and I ended up playing it with Monique and Naveen from Before You Play and Amy from Thinker Themer. And in Animal Kingdom, you're trying to take control of these 5 different kingdoms. And you have cards with the animals on them. And so you're trying to play cards into these kingdoms to meet this certain decree. So let's say the decree is you have to play the animal cards. They have numbers on them. You have to play them in ascending order. Or another kingdom says you have to play pairs of the animals. And it was really, really fun. I really did enjoy that game. So that's Animal Kingdom, And I think the best part was the fact the game was good, but I love playing with the guys that I was playing with. And that was really nice. So that's Dice Tower West. Okay, coming home. Had a week to catch up on work. I had to make up some hours. But then I got back to my Friday night board game meetup, and the first game we played was a game that I kickstarted, that I own, I've put together, but hadn't had a chance to play it yet. And that is Merchants of the Dark Road from Elf Creek Games. Now, anybody that knows Elf Creek Games, I know I got the deluxe copy, but Elf Creek Games as a whole does a wonderful production of their games. I got Atlantis Rising, I have Honey Buzz, and of course, Merchants of the Dark Road. There were the 3 things. 1, Elf Creek Games. Knew it was going to be aesthetically beautiful. 2, fantasy. Now, I don't get all into the fantasy where you're like fighting and all that. I like when it's set in a fantasy environment. So that had me. But the big thing that had me was the fact that the art was done by Andrew Bosley, who is my favorite board game illustrator of all times. He did Everdale. I'm looking forward to another game that he's doing with another illustrator I really like, Vincent Dutray, and I think the game is called Unconscious Minds, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. That had me, like, I'm not even sure what the game's about, but those 2 illustrators together, that had me right there. So, Merchants of the Dark Road, you are a merchant, you have your little carriage, and you're going to get goods, and you're selling them to adventurers, and you're transporting these adventurers. It's like a pick up and deliver type game. It's a rondel, and you're taking these adventurers to the towns, and you're trying to gain reputation or prestige or whatever. And I really enjoyed this game. Now, the next game I want to talk about is a Euro. It's a game I never heard of. Let me look at my list so I can read this. Sito Stato. That's what it's called. And it's a game that came out in 2021. And you look at the board, the box art for this game, the game is beautiful. The game is really beautiful. But it is a dry Euro. And it's a good Euro. It's a bag builder where you're pulling cubes out. So you pull one cube, you pull a certain number of cubes out of the bag. And when you do an actual one cube, the next action, you have to do, you have to put 2 cubes and they have to be the same type. And it's like I don't know, I can't even describe it. It's such a dry game, but it's good. You know, if my board game group said they wanted to play it again, yeah, I give it another shot, but it's not something I would gravitate to on my own, you know, but like I said, box art is beautiful. Now, the next game is a game that I'd already played, but like I said, I met my friend up at the board game store and I taught him Savannah Park, but I also taught him Cascadia. Now, Cascadia is just a beautiful game. Now, that was my second favorite game of 2021. You know, I think both me and my wife's second favorite game. And I love Cascadia. It is just simply drafting tiles, placing them, building up your environment, and you're placing animal tokens where they want to live. And they have certain ways they want to live, like the hawk wants to be alone or the bear wants to be in pairs based on the cards that you have. It's Beth Sobel art, which she's one of my favorite illustrators, and he loved Cascadia. So, the next game is a game that my wife and I really enjoy. We got sent a copy of this game from Kids Table Board Games, and that is Fossilis. Fossilis is so fun. I mean, in Fossilis, you are digging for dinosaur bones, trying to put together these dinosaurs. And you actually have, like, I called it the operation mechanic, where you're taking tweezers and you're shifting these stones or clay or sand, shifting these tiles, trying to find the bones that you need to create your dinosaur. So we did a review for this game and we loved it. And then the day that the review came up, my wife's friend and her 12-year-old daughter came over. And we ended up playing it again. And we had such a good time. The funny thing about this game is the fact that we found like one particular bone, somebody, and everybody was looking for it. And so everybody was like, don't you go get that bone. I need that bone. And I'm sitting there like, there's more than one type of that bone out on the dig site. Just move some tile. Because everybody was like threatening each other, like, don't you get that bone, And it was just so fun, And that's Fossilis. Great family game. Now, next game, my Friday night board game meetup, and it was actually just 2 of us this time. And so I took the opportunity to introduce him to Canopy. And he really enjoyed Canopy, art by Vincent Dutray. We really loved that game. And then he introduced me to another one of my favorite games of the month, and that is Unforgiving, the Abraham Lincoln trial. And in this game, one person plays as the defense, the other person plays as the prosecutor, and we are trying to convict this woman. I can't remember her name. She was named as one of the conspirators in the Abraham Lincoln assassination, And it's kind of like Seven Wonders Duel. And like, I've never played Seven Wonders Duel, but I know how it's played. And Splendor mixed together. And you're drafting these cards, making sure you had the resources to pay for these cards. But when you draft these cards, you're revealing a couple other cards that your opponent can draft. And you're trying to win this trial. And we played it twice. The first time we played, I was just trying to wrap my mind around the game, and he won. And then the second time we played, I was like, I want to play again. I want to play this game again. And we played it again, and I won the second time. But that game is, I really need to find me a copy of that game. And he let me bring it home because I'm wondering if my wife might like it, because she really likes history and all that, So I don't know. I'm going to try to get her involved in this game. And then the last game we played that night was Three Sisters, which I really enjoyed. Now, Three Sisters, a lot of combo. It's a roll and write game where you are, like I said, you're rolling dice and you're picking a certain number and taking that action and you're planting garden. Now, Three Sisters, it pertains to corn, beans, and pumpkins. And it's a way that they all interact with each other. And so it's just a really, really good game. You know, I enjoyed it, you know. But it's a lot of combos. So the first time I played it once, and I'm interested in going. I'm really definitely going to go back to play that game because I want to see if I can get a better score. Because, like I said, it's a lot of combos going on in that game. Now, we're getting to the end. All right. So, I got two more games. Though one game is a game that I had on my shelf that I've been trying to get off my shelf and try it out. And it had a solo mode. And that's another game from Aeg Games called the Red Cathedral. Now, the Red Cathedral, you are using dice as workers. They're going around this rondel and you're building, you know, this cathedral. And you have to get the resources in order to build on the cathedral. And I'm finding that I really like games that use dice as workers. You know, I really like it. This game is really, really good. And so, like I said, I was interested in it because Batoku, I really love Batoku. And now Red Cathedral, and I have Luna Capital and all, and Aeg Games does that one. And I've heard a lot of great things for that. So hopefully I can play that in the month of April. Now, the last game that I played is that I'm, you know, prepping. I played it with my wife because we're getting ready to do a video for it. And that is Skull Canyon Ski Fest. Now, this is a game I played in February, and that was when I was learning it, but I finally got the chance to play it with my wife. And Skull Canyon Ski Fest is, you know, it's set, we're skiers. And we're coming down this mountain, and we're playing cards. And it's kind of got like a ticket to ride feel, because you need to get these certain amount of cards in order to ski these certain runs. And there are easy runs, and there are very difficult runs that require more cards. The cool part about this game is when you ski a run, you claim it. And then if anybody else wants to ski that run, they can either just ski it and get the regular points, or they can steal it. And then in order to steal it, they have to play one more card than you did. And while you're doing that, because at the end, whoever skied the most runs, like whoever skied the most easy runs or the intermediate runs or the difficult runs, will get a certain number of points at the end of the game. And so we played that. We're going to play it again. You know, that game is really fun for families. It's a really good family game, but it does have a little take that. Just be aware of that, because, you know, when I stole a run, my wife was not happy. You know, so I think that's all the games. Yes, sir. Yep, that's all of them. Those are all the games that I played in the month of March, and I had a really good time with all of them. You know, so in the comments below, let me know what are some of your favorite games that you played in the month of March. You know, like I said, my favorite, Dice Miner. I'm on the hunt for that. Unforgiving. I love Three Sisters. I have Three Sisters, but Unforgiving, I need to get a copy of that one. So, if you like the contents of this video, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And I'm Dwayne. This has been my board game wrap-up video for the month of March. And I will see you next month.